You know, I've played Life and Death so many times over the years that I never really thought of owning a boxed copy of the game. Ain't it convenient that somebody dropped this at my front door? If I ever find the person who dropped it there, I want to thank them. Well, either that or I have to give it back to them, I don't know. Way to go, resident skinny fat ass. The power's out.
Hey, don't blame me, I paid the electricity bill on time.
Retriku?
Yeah?
I don't want to alarm you, but...
Who the hell keeps dropping us copies of Life and Death games in our front door?
I don't know, but whoever it is knows what games we are playing, and it's freaking me out.
Wait,
What?
take a look at this. They left a note inside the cover.
Are you enjoying Life and Death? The MS-DOS version not doing it for you? Or maybe you wanted to play the sequel? Well, here you are, the last of the Life and Death games I have for you to take a look at, all in their entire glory. Enjoy the games, just hope you don't get any nightmares after playing them. Good night, Retriku. By the way, might be a better idea to flip some switches on the circuit breaker. Might save you some time from asking an electrician to fix your electricity.
See what I mean? They know what games we play. Well, I don't know about that, but it sure is concerning. Look, how about you stay here, calm down, and I'll get the power back on and running. There's gotta be a logical explanation behind this.
Well, that's easy for you to say.
Hey! Retriku, are you okay?
I'm fine.
What the hell were you doing out there? I saw a guy try to hide in a front porch, so I tried to chase him. Maybe you do have a point. Somebody does know what games we've played. Do you think it might be the same guy that dropped us those Life and Death games in our front door? I don't know. Let's get back inside. Something tells me that this guy left these games for us to take a look at, not because they know what games we've played, but because their intention is to scare us. So you're telling me that the person who dropped us those Life and Death games in our front door is the same person who caused a power outage in our house?
Exactly.
So where do we start from here?
Let's start with the sequel.
With the release of Life and Death for the MS-DOS and the home computer ports that followed it, it's inevitable that the game would receive a sequel. That's why in 1990 the software Toolworks released a sequel to the first entry, titled Life and Death 2: The Brain. According to the cover, you don't need to become a brain surgeon in order to play this game.
Yeah, and I don't need to be an arsonist to start a forest fire.
Inside the box you get 4 3.5-inch floppy disks instead of the 3 that you get with the first game, a user manual that works both as a memo and as an operating procedures manual, and last but not least is an end user license agreement page.
What, no mask or gloves?
No.
Well, that's lame. How are we going to perform surgery with no mask or gloves? Oh no, I am not performing surgery with those.
And I'm not going out of my way to buy a box of latex gloves just to cosplay as Dr. Vlad Claude, so I guess we're both even.
Cheap ass.
Hey, I may be an ass, but I ain't cheap. Well then stop stalling and start installing, Mr. Ass! Once you're done installing the game and loading it via the DOS terminal, the game launches with the Software Toolworks logo in color, followed by a title screen of a brain inside a container. Moving past the title screen, the game begins with a clipboard that you need to sign in order to enter the hospital. Once you're done writing your name on the clipboard, a man in the intercom welcomes you to the hospital, then tells you to report to medical school for orientation, as usual. When you're finished with medical school, you can now start exploring the Toolworks General Hospital. Inside the hospital corridor are multiple rooms you can explore in this game, such as the scan rooms, which don't serve much of a purpose except to show you the types of diagnoses you can encounter during the scans of your patient's brain, the patient rooms where you'll be examining your patients in, an operating room where you can perform brain surgery on your patients, a receptionist station where you can attempt to put moves on receptionist Edith MacDonald, a medical school where the chief of surgery does the tutoring, a morgue where you can revisit your past mistakes by clicking on the clipboards which tells you what you did wrong in your procedures, a cafeteria which also doesn't serve much of a purpose except to see this guy who loves to gossip about your surgical team members, as well as seeing how much of a shit show it is inside the cafeteria, like this man pouring a ridiculous amount of hot coffee that is past its serving capacity. I mean, look at him! How much coffee does he really need in that cup?
Enough for him to get third-degree burns in his hand, that's for sure.
Anyway, let's finish this exploration by taking a look at the last few places you can interact with. These two are the offices, with the left side being the chief's office and the right side being yours. Inside the chief's office isn't much apart from a computer that only shows an email sent to the abdominal chief of surgery from the first game. Oddly enough, if you keep messing around in this game, the email changes to something negative, which indicates that you need to act like a real doctor instead of a serial killer. There isn't really much to interact with, so let's move next door to your office. Inside your office are multiple objects you can interact with. Clicking on one of the bottom frames shows you a list of honor roll doctors who have completed a specific brain operation. Clicking on top is another one of those pointless advertisement spaces, and a plant that begs for water if you click on it. Clicking on the desk shows you additional objects, such as a file folder with a roster of team members you can assign on a brain surgery, this time not including digitized images of actual people, a clipboard which allows you to change the settings where you see fit, a neurology textbook where you can learn about what condition does what to the brain and how to treat them, and even a computer you can ask what to do in case a man with a mask comes in and drops life and death games on your front door. Sorta. So after getting to know the locations of the neurosurgery wing of the hospital amongst other things you can explore and interact with, let's move on to our first patient. Once you're inside the patient's room, you first have to take a look at the clipboard on top of the patient. Now this is an essential thing you must do when it comes to meeting a new patient, because if you don't, you'll be reminded to do so in medical school, so don't forget it. Another essential thing you must do when it comes to meeting your patients is to examine them. Unlike in the first game where you only examine the patient's abdomen in order to diagnose them, in this game you have to examine the 3 parts of their bodies: their face, arms, and legs. Inspecting their face will give you any signs of abnormalities with their vision and speech. For this you'll need the flashlight. This will show you if their pupils are dilated even without the flashlight, one pupil or both being thicker than normal, or sometimes showing no abnormalities at all. And it's not just when their eyes are still that you see something abnormal with their pupils. Sometimes one side of their eye may be still when you have them looking at a pointer stick. Another tool for this examination is a speech card which makes them say Alice. This will tell you if they have some slurred speech when they do say the name incorrectly. Alice. And last but not least is a nail which you'll need to test their senses. If they don't feel any pain after sticking the nail on the sides of their face, then something must be going wrong with their brain. Or something might be going wrong with yours if you're willing to stick that nail into the patient's eye. Moving down to the arms and legs, they pretty much function the same way when it comes to examining them. All you need to do is lift up their limbs, then let go of them to see if their reflexes are absent or not, as well as using a tailor hammer on their joints to see if their arm or leg swings up when you hit them. Oh, and there's the nail again so you can check their senses. Ouch! Now if you thought that the number of diagnostic cases are the same like in the previous game, then you'd be wrong. In fact, there are 7 cases to solve, with only 3 brain operations to perform. For the most part, you will be diagnosing and treating patients rather than picking up the knife to operate, and for a first-timer, it may be impossible to not know which diagnosis does what and how to treat them without referring to some sort of procedures manual, which this game does not have. And that's where the neurology textbook in medical school come into play. Yes, the medical school finally has a purpose to serve in this game. Unlike in the previous game where you could only go to medical school to learn from the mistakes you make, in this game you can go to medical school and learn about the mental conditions you'll be encountering on your patients. It's just a shame that you won't be able to learn how to perform surgery without a video guide. For that you will need to go to YouTube and learn from someone who's performed these operations. And speaking of which, let's finish this off by talking about the brain operations. You have 3 to perform: the brain tumor, aneurysm, and subdural hematoma. These surgeries are the most complex operations you'll be performing. In my experience, I only went as far as the subdural hematoma operation, and out of all the 3 operations in this game, this one is the easiest to beat. All you need to do is find the cracked side of the skull, then operate on that area in order to get rid of the blood clot. Simple as that. The last 2 operations, on the other hand, are difficult to accomplish without messing up, and to pour salt on the open wound, the game was released with a glitch, which makes these operations virtually unplayable. From what I've read in the YouTube comments about the mouse glitch, and from my experience alone, there are only 2 ways you can fuck up the operation. The first is to have the skull already sawed open, in which the game will randomly crash whenever you pick up the sawed skull. The other is to use the drill to create a burr hole in the skull, in which by the time it's already drilled open, the drill refuses to stop, eventually killing the patient or skinning the drill on the burr hole. Look, I'm not even kidding. The drill keeps on going after you've already let go of the mouse button. It's like the game has a mind of its own.
What the fuck?
How could they have released a game like this? They had to have known something was wrong when they have tested it, yet the game was released in a buggy state like this. Oh, but do you really want to know how to get past this issue?
How?
Look down at your keyboard. See the enter button?
Yeah, what about it?
You have to hold the enter button when you're using the drill and then let go of it once you've created the burr hole. How the fuck is the software Toolworks expecting anyone to perform the two operations when the game keeps bugging out on this one specific area? Not to mention that the operations have to be done without a flaw. Imagine spending your hard-earned money on a brand new buggy game and there's no patch for it whatsoever.
Imagine spending your hard-earned money on a used buggy game that was up for resale on eBay and yet there's still no patch for it whatsoever. The guy with the black mask would know.
Right, so now that we got the sequel out of the way, let's take a look at the last of the ports of Life and Death that made its way to Japan, such as the FM Towns port. In 1991, Japan received its localization of Life and Death for the PC-98, with the FM Towns and Sharp X68000 version releasing the next year. I'll be covering the FM Towns port of the game, because, believe it or not, the game is identical to the other home computer ports, but more on that later. What do you do when you want to localize a surgery simulation game in Japan and want to market the game in the most creepiest way possible? You tint the original cover artwork to piss yellow, invert the colors, and boom, Raifun desu. Look at this cover! This is total nightmare fuel! Even the sequel that made its way to Japan had this inverted color scheme, but with a different cover artwork. Inside this cursed box, you get an operations manual which comes in this nice little red cover, a startup guide on how to set the game up via the Towns OS, and a copy of the game on CD. Now, in order to run this game, you need a blank 3.5-inch floppy disk in order for the game to write its save data, as well as a 2MB memory expansion unit for the game to run properly. And last but not least, running this game on actual hardware. Yeah, I don't have an FM Towns to run this game on, and trying to buy one on eBay is damn near impossible due to the ridiculous prices these things are going for. And don't even get me started with the prices on some of these FM Towns games. But fret not, because while I'm not able to play the game on a real computer, I can actually play this game using an FM Towns emulator called UNS. All I need to do is mount the CD on my computer, load a DOS boot disk file via the emulator, and voila, you're now ready to play Life and Death. Once you're already done with the setup, the game launches with the creepiest title screen for a surgery simulation game imaginable. Moving on to the corridor of the hospital, and you can start to notice a big difference in the graphics and sound department. Remember when I said that the FM Towns port looked identical to the PC-98 port? This is basically a PC-98 port running on the FM Towns and Sharp X68000. Why bother making a port of Life and Death for the FM Towns and X68K if the only thing you're gonna do is reuse the graphics from the PC-98 version and change the music? This type of Sunday job is exactly the kind you see on European games where the coders milked out a lazy port to the Amstrad CPC by using the ZX Spectrum code. And despite this port being a PC-98 conversion, which is based upon the original MS-DOS game, the graphics have received a makeover for the better or the worse. I don't know about you, but I'm kinda mixed with how the graphics look in some areas. I mean, look at the patients in this version compared to the Apple II GS version, which was released in 1989. This makes the Japanese home computers look weak in comparison, which is the exact opposite when you find out that these home computers brought Japanese gamers the best arcade experiences at home long before the 5th generation of consoles did. For the most part. And if you thought that wasn't enough to convince you that this is the laziest port of Life and Death to the FM Towns, then look at the graphics in the operating room. Yep, compare this to the PC-98 port and nothing much has changed. The only difference as far as I can see are the upscaled sprites due to the PC-98 version switching resolution in this game. Seriously, out of the 2 months that it took you to port this, did you even consider to make any graphical enhancements to this version before you released it on store shelves? No? Well then, can you at least explain why you couldn't? Okay, so they had a convention in late 91 and wanted to impress the public by showcasing a handful of games that were being made for the home computer at the time. And right now I can hear you shouting that the graphics shouldn't matter if the gameplay is good. Isn't it at least good in that department? Well, to be fair, the gameplay is the same as the MS-DOS version, and when you do manage to beat the 2 operations in this game, it ends with a nice end credit sequence, which, to be honest, is a wholesome ending unlike the Western version where it ends with a lousy certificate of graduation. And that concludes the Life and Death series of games, and if you were to ask me which game I prefer out of the 2, I'd choose the first one. While the sequel isn't bad in my opinion, it's nowhere near as good as the first one due to the slightly more serious tone they were going for. Not to mention the complexity of the operations, which really put me off. I mean, yeah, it is a surgery simulation game, but when the developers state that the game is meant for fun and not for education, I expect it to be exactly that. That's where I think the developers meant this when they stated it on the game's manual. They knew the player wasn't going to take this game seriously, so that's why they put this warning on the manual to cover their asses in case a dumbass performs surgery on someone because they played this game. The surgery simulation games have changed over the years, from being down-to-earth serious to being campy as hell, and it's easy to see why. Nobody is expected to learn from these games, let alone perform the surgeries the intended way. Hell, not even one of the characters from the anime Genshiken could take life and death seriously.
Oh yeah! Do you know the game Life and Death? I don't even know how many people I killed in that!
And that phase says it all.
Well, you're finally awake. Oh, yeah. How long have I been sleeping? Long enough for you to have missed the games I covered, that's for sure. Damn it all.
And to think I could have waken up by the time you were about to review those games. Oh, man.
Sorry.
Look at that. Oh, God. Hell yeah. Now we got the big-ass selfie stick right there. It's taller than anybody else's. It's called the tripod, though.
Hi, Billy Mays here!